They thought they broke you. That's the funniest part of this entire story, because the version of you they tried to destroy already died a long time ago. They never noticed it. They never understood why your eyes changed, why your silence became heavier, why crowds suddenly felt fake to you. Why did you stop explaining yourself? Why certain people could no longer reach your spirit no matter how hard they tried. They thought pain was punishing you, but pain was initiating you. There is a moment in every chosen one's life where the old self is buried alive, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. A death so deep that nobody around them even realizes it happened. You still walk, you still speak, you still smile sometimes. But internally, the person you once were is gone forever, and that is the moment the veil begins to lift. Most people never experience this because most people spend their entire lives running from pain, escaping truth, distracting themselves with noise, validation, entertainment, addictions, fake relationships, fake goals, fake identities. But the chosen one, you were forced into the fire. You didn't ask for it. You didn't volunteer for it. Life. I dragged you into darkness and locked the door behind you, and that darkness changed your vision forever. You started seeing things other people couldn't see. The fake smiles, the hidden jealousy, the manipulation behind kindness, the emptiness behind status, the insecurity hiding behind arrogance, the spiritual sickness hidden behind material success. You began noticing energy before words. That scared people, because once a person can see beyond the mask, they become impossible to control. That is why your journey became lonely. Not because you are cursed, not because you are unlovable, but because awakened people threaten sleeping minds. The moment your veil lifted, you stopped fitting into the old world. Conversations became shallow. Friendships became exhausting. Places that once entertained you suddenly drained your soul. You started craving silence more than attention. Isolation became medicine, and people misunderstood it. They called you distant, cold, too intense, too emotional, too different. But what they didn't understand is this. You were recovering from a spiritual death, a death nobody saw. There are wounds that don't bleed externally. Wounds that tear through identity itself. Some of you lost people you thought would stay forever. Some of you were betrayed by those you loved most. Some of you watched your dreams collapse in front of your eyes. Some of you cried alone night after night, asking God why your life felt like constant warfare while everybody else seemed asleep and comfortable. But comfort was never your destiny. Transformation was. And transformation is violent. Every butterfly must dissolve before it can fly. Every diamond must survive pressure before it can shine. Every chosen one must experience death before awakening. That is the secret nobody talks about. The veil is not lifted through happiness. It is lifted through suffering. Suffering strips illusions. It forces you to confront reality. It exposes who people truly are. It reveals your hidden strength. It destroys your dependence on external validation. It kills the ego that once needed approval. That's why after everything you've survived, you no longer fear people the same way. You've already lost too much, already cried too much, already survived nights that should have destroyed you. So now, you move differently, calmer, sharper, more. You can feel when someone secretly envies you. You can sense when a room shifts energy. You can tell when someone's words don't match their spirit. And this makes people uncomfortable around you, because your presence exposes masks without even trying. The chosen one carries a mirror energy. People see themselves around you. Their lies become visible. Their insecurities rise to the surface. Their darkness becomes harder to hide. That's why some people randomly dislike you before even knowing you. Your energy threatens the false version of themselves they worked so hard to maintain. And what hurts the most is that many times the attacks came from people closest to you. Family, friends, partners, people you would have sacrificed everything for. But betrayal was part of the awakening, because God had to show you one painful truth. Not everyone connected to you is assigned to your destiny. Some people were only meant to test your discernment. Some were meant to strengthen your boundaries. Some were meant to trigger your evolution. Some were meant to leave so you could finally discover yourself. and every departure hurt, especially because your heart was genuine. Chosen ones love deeply. They care deeply. They forgive too much. They give chances long after people deserve them. That's why your betrayals cut so deeply, because you would never intentionally do to others what they did to you. But pain became your teacher. You learned that loyalty is rare, intentions matter, energy never lies, and silence reveals more than words ever could. You also learned something terrifying. Most people are asleep, not physically, spiritually. They chase meaningless things while their souls starve. They worship appearances while neglecting character. They follow crowds because independent thinking terrifies them. They avoid truth because truth demands transformation. But once your veil lifts, you cannot return to ignorance. You start noticing patterns everywhere. You realize how society rewards conformity, how people are programmed by fear, how many relationships are transactional, how many systems profit from keeping people weak, distracted, divided, exhausted. And suddenly, your old life no longer makes sense. That's why many chosen ones go through periods of intense isolation after awakening. You are recalibrating. Your soul is detoxing from illusion. The old version of you cannot survive in your new awareness. And during this stage, you may feel lost. You may question everything: your purpose, your identity, your future, even your sanity sometimes. Because awakening feels lonely before it feels empowering. At first, it feels like losing everything. But eventually, you realize you were only losing what was blocking your evolution. The universe had to remove distractions, false attachments, fake alignments, toxic comfort zones, because your destiny requires clarity, and clarity often arrives through destruction. Think about it. The strongest version of you was not born during your happiest moments. It was born in isolation, in heartbreak, in betrayal, in depression, in confusion, in survival mode. That version of you is sacred, because that version met darkness face to face and still refused to die. Most people never understand the strength it takes to rebuild yourself after life shatters your identity. To wake up carrying invisible pain and still continue. To smile while internally fighting battles nobody sees. To continue believing in purpose after disappointment after disappointment. That is spiritu, hell warfare. And many chosen ones don't realize this. Your suffering was never random. The enemy attacks what carries light. That's why your path has been so difficult. Your spirit was never ordinary. Your purpose was never small. Your existence disrupts darkness itself, and darkness always reacts to light. That's why you experienced rejection in places where you tried hardest to belong. That's why people projected onto you. That's why some individuals competed with you for no reason. That's why your kindness was mistaken for weakness. That's why you felt different your entire life. You were never designed to blend in. You were designed to awaken. But awakening comes with a cost. You lose illusions. You lose fake connections. You lose old identities. You lose the comfort of ignorance. And in exchange, you gain sight. Eyes. Not with the eyes, with the soul. You begin understanding things without explanation. You feel guided away from certain people. You sense danger before it arrives. You experience synchronicities. You outgrow environments rapidly. You feel emotionally exhausted around fake energy. This is not coincidence. Your discernment sharpened after you. Spiritual death, and people notice it, even if they cannot explain it. Some feel intimidated around you. Some feel exposed. Some feel drawn to your peace. Some secretly envy your resilience because they know they would have collapsed under what you survived. Never apologize for the strength your pain created. You earned every scar. You earned every lesson. You earned this awareness through suffering most people would never survive. And yes, there were moments you almost gave up. Moments where the loneliness felt unbearable. Moments where you questioned whether life would ever improve. Moments where you begged for relief. Moments where darkness whispered that your existence didn't matter. But you survived. Remember that. You survived every version of yourself that thought it couldn't continue. That alone proves there is something greater protecting your path. Because chosen ones are preserved for purpose. Your story is not accidental. Even the pain had meaning. Especially the pain. Without it, your eyes would still be closed. Without betrayal, your discernment would remain weak. Without isolation, you would never hear your soul clearly. Without heartbreak, you would. LD still chase people incapable of loving you correctly. Without loss, you would never understand your own resilience. Your death birthed your awakening. And now, you can never become who you used to be again. You've seen too much, felt too much, understood too much. That old innocent version of you is gone forever. Mourn them if you need to, but do not try to resurrect them, because your next chapter requires the awakened version of you, the wiser version, the stronger version, the spiritually protected version. You are entering a phase where your intuition will become your greatest weapon. Listen carefully to it. When your spirit feels uneasy around someone, pay attention. When your energy suddenly drains in certain environments, pay attention. When your soul urges you to move differently, trust it. The awakened chosen one survives by discernment, not appearances. Because evil rarely introduces itself honestly. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it flatters. Sometimes it pretends to love you. But your soul knows. That's why your sensitivity is not weakness. It is spiritual intelligence. Protect it. The world tries to harden sensitive souls because sensitivity threatens. 10 systems built on numbness. But your ability to feel deeply is part of your gift. It allows you to perceive what others miss. Never lose that. At the same time, understand this clearly. Not everybody deserves access to you anymore. That version of you who tolerated disrespect just to avoid losing people, dead. That version who over-explained themselves to be understood, dead. That version who ignored red flags because they hoped people would change, dead. Good. Let them stay dead. Your rebirth requires boundaries, and boundaries will offend people who benefited from your lack of them. Do not feel guilty. You spent too much of your life shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Now it is time to choose yourself, fully, without apology, without fear, without needing permission. Because the truth is, many people only loved the version of you they could control. The healed version, the awakened version, the powerful version. That version terrifies them. Why? Because you no longer abandon yourself for acceptance. You no longer beg for love. You no longer chase validation. You no longer tolerate manipulation disguised as connection. And once a chosen one reaches that level of awareness, their energy changes permanently. You become magnetic, not because you try, but because authenticity carries power. People can feel when someone has survived darkness and transformed instead of becoming bitter. That energy cannot be faked. You carry depth now, presence, wisdom, spiritual weight. Even your silence speaks differently. That's why your future will not resemble your past. The suffering phase was preparation. You thought life was punishing you, but life was training you. Training your mind to endure. Training your spirit to discern. Training your heart to heal. Training your soul to lead. Because eventually, your story will become survival instructions for others. One day, someone will hear your story and decide not to quit. One day, your wisdom will help someone escape darkness. One day, your scars will remind another broken soul that healing is possible. Nothing you survived was wasted. Nothing. The nights you cried alone, the betrayals, the confusion, the abandonment, the silent battles nobody knew about. All of it shaped your awakening. And now you stand different from the crowd. Not superior. Different. More conscious. Ours. More intentional. More connected to truth. That is why superficial things no longer impress you. You value peace more than popularity, depth more than attention, authenticity more than performance, alignment more than approval. You finally understand that protecting your energy is more important than proving yourself. And that realization changes everything. Because once the chosen one stops seeking external validation, they become unstoppable. Fear loses power over them. Manipulation loses power over them. Public opinion loses power over them. Why? Because they already survived their internal death. Nothing external compares to that battle. The person who has rebuilt themselves from emotional ruin carries a dangerous level of strength. A quiet strength. A spiritual strength. And that strength is exactly why your enemies underestimated you. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your kindness meant fragility. They thought your isolation meant failure, but isolation was your transformation chamber. While they were distracted by appearances, you were rebuilding your soul. Now your energy carries something rare, inner authority. You no longer need everyone to understand you. You no longer panic when people leave. You no longer fear solitude, because solitude introduced you to yourself. And once you truly meet yourself, loneliness disappears. There is power in becoming your own safe place. That is the lesson your suffering was trying to teach you all along. People may abandon you. Situations may collapse. Life may change overnight. But if you can stand firmly within yourself, nothing can truly destroy you. That is the final stage of the chosen one awakening. Self-possession. The ability to remain spiritually grounded regardless of chaos. And trust me, chaos will come. Life will continue testing your growth. The universe will continue revealing hidden truths. You will continue shedding old layers. But now, you are no longer asleep. Now you recognize the patterns. Now you trust your intuition. Now you understand your worth. Now you know your spirit survived things that should have broken it. That knowledge changes how you walk through the world. You stop chasing, stop forcing, stop begging, stop proving. You simply align. And what belongs to you begins finding you naturally. The right people, the right opposite, opportunities, the right purpose, the right peace. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because your energy finally became clear. The veil lifted. And once the veil lifts, the soul can no longer tolerate what is misaligned. That is why some relationships collapsed. That is why certain doors closed. That is why old environments became unbearable. Your spirit outgrew them. Do not go backward just because loneliness visits sometimes. Evolution feels lonely before it feels liberating. Remember that. Most people settle because temporary loneliness scares them more than permanent misalignment. But not you. You were forced to evolve. And now there is no returning to unconscious living. You have seen the truth hidden behind appearances. You know how fragile life is, how fake many connections are, how precious peace is, how important spiritual alignment is. And because of this awareness, your future will be different. You are no longer operating from survival alone. You are beginning to operate from purpose. That is the shift. A chosen one who survives awakening becomes a force impossible to manipulate, because they no longer fear endings. They understand that every ending carries transformation. You learn this through pain. The death of your old self taught you that destruction is sometimes divine. Sometimes things fall apart because your soul can no longer grow there. Sometimes isolation is protection. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes loss is liberation. And one day, you will look back at the moments that nearly destroyed you and realize they were actually separating you from the life that was destroying your spirit slowly. That is the irony of awakening. The things you cried over were often the things blocking your destiny. Now look at yourself, still standing, still evolving, still carrying light despite everything. That alone is miraculous. Never underestimate how powerful it is to remain soft-hearted in a world that tried to harden you. Never underestimate how powerful it is to continue believing after disappointment. And never forget this truth. The reason your veil lifted is because your soul survived death, not physical death. The death of illusion, the death of innocence, the death of dependency, the death of the false self. And from that death, a new being emerged, a being capable of seeing through deception, a being capable of transforming pain into wisdom, a being capable of walking alone without losing themselves. That is the real power of the chosen one. Not perfection, transformation. You became dangerous the moment suffering failed to destroy your heart, because now your spirit understands something most people never learn. Darkness can shape you, but it does not own you. And that realization changes everything forever. They thought they were destroying you. That's what makes this story so powerful. They thought the betrayal would finish you. They thought the abandonment would weaken you. They thought the humiliation would silence you. They thought the pressure would crush your spirit beyond repair. But what they never understood was that the version of you they were attacking had already died long before they arrived. The old you was already gone. The person who needed validation. The person who begged to be understood. The person who tolerated disrespect just to keep people close. The person who ignored red flags because they feared being alone. The person who kept shrinking themselves so others could feel comfortable around their light. That version died in silence. Not in one dramatic moment, but slowly. Through heartbreak, through disappointment, through sleepless nights, through silent battles nobody knew you were fighting. Through moments where you stared at the ceiling, questioning your worth, your purpose, even your existence. And while the world thought you were falling apart, something sacred was happening inside you. You were awakening. Pain has a strange way of opening human eyes. When life removes comfort, illusions begin to collapse. You start seeing people differently. You start recognizing fake love, fake loyalty, fake intentions. You begin understanding that not everyone who smiles at you wants the best for you. And that realization changes you forever. Because once a soul sees truth clearly, it can never return to blindness again. That's what happened to you. The suffering they thought would destroy your spirit actually sharpened it. Every betrayal increased your discernment. Every loss deepened your wisdom. Every rejection strengthened your independence. Every lonely night forced you to discover strength you never knew existed. You stopped looking for people to save you because pain taught you how to soar. Heavy yourself. That is the transformation nobody talks about. The strongest people are not born strong. They are rebuilt through destruction. And rebuilding yourself after emotional death is one of the hardest battles a human being can face. Because there comes a moment where you realize nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody fully understands your pain. Nobody can walk your internal journey for you. And in that moment, something either breaks forever or awakens completely. You awakened. That's why you move differently now. Your silence carries weight. Your energy changed. Your tolerance became smaller. Your intuition became sharper. You no longer chase people who misunderstand you. You no longer force connections. You no longer abandon yourself for acceptance. Because pain taught you a lesson comfort never could. Losing yourself to keep others happy is the real tragedy. Now you understand your worth at a soul level, and that scares people. Because awakened people become difficult to manipulate. You can no longer be controlled by guilt, by fear, by approval, by temporary validation. Why? Because you already survived your internal death. The hardest battle already has. Cat popped within you. And when a person survives the collapse of their old identity, they become dangerous in the most powerful way possible. Not dangerous because they want revenge. Dangerous because they no longer fear losing what once controlled them. That is your power now. Your pain didn't destroy you. It revealed you. The fire was never sent to burn your soul. It was sent to expose the strength hidden underneath everything the world tried to bury. And now, after everything you survived, you finally understand the truth. They were attacking a version of you that no longer existed. Because the real you, the awakened you, was already rising from the ashes. Chosen ones do not become powerful through comfort. Comfort never created warriors. Comfort never awakened the soul. Comfort never revealed hidden strength. Power is born in darkness. And that is why the chosen one's path is never easy. While others were laughing, sleeping peacefully, living ordinary lives, you were fighting battles nobody could see. Battles inside your mind. Battles inside your heart. Battles so deep that some nights you felt like your spirit was collapsing under the weight of it all. But what feature does it have? Less like destruction was actually transformation, because chosen ones gain vision through suffering. Pain changes the way you see the world. It strips away illusions. It exposes hidden truths. It forces you to look deeper than appearances. Before the suffering, you trusted easily. You loved openly. You believed people's words without questioning their intentions. But betrayal changed that. The people you would have protected the most became the same people who wounded you deeply. Some lied to you. Some abandoned you. Some secretly envied you while pretending to support you. Some only loved you when you were useful, broken, or easy to control. And every betrayal opened your eyes wider. Not because it made you hateful, but because it made you aware. Awareness is expensive. Most people never reach true awareness because they spend their lives avoiding pain. They distract themselves with entertainment, relationships, attention, addictions, noise, anything to escape facing themselves. But the chosen one does not escape the darkness. The chosen one is dragged into it, and inside that darkness, something ancient awakens. You begin noticing energy before words. You start sensing hidden intentions. You can feel when something is wrong, even when everybody else ignores it. You become sensitive to manipulation, fake love, and spiritual emptiness. That sensitivity was born from suffering. The isolation changed you too. There were seasons where you felt completely alone, seasons where nobody understood your silence, seasons where your soul felt disconnected from the world around you. You watched friendships fade, relationships collapse, conversations become empty. Places that once felt normal suddenly felt heavy and draining. At first you thought isolation was punishment, but later you realized isolation was preparation, because when the world becomes silent, the soul finally speaks. Isolation forces the chosen one to confront themselves without distraction. No masks, no pretending, no escaping. And in those lonely moments, you met the real you. Not the version society created, not the version people expected. The real you, the wounded you, the gifted you, the awakened you. That encounter changes a person forever. Then came the spiritual death, the most painful stage of all. The moment where the old version of you collapsed completely. The version that needed external validation. The version that feared rejection. The version that tolerated disrespect just to avoid loneliness. The version that kept begging for love from emotionally unavailable people. That version had to die. And spiritual death feels terrifying because it feels like losing yourself entirely. You question everything. Your identity, your purpose, your future, your worth. Some nights feel unbearably heavy because your soul is shedding layers it can no longer carry. But spiritual death is not the end. It is the beginning of true sight. Because after the ego dies, clarity arrives. You stop chasing approval. You stop forcing relationships. You stop betraying yourself to make others comfortable. And suddenly, your vision sharpens. You see through people faster. You recognize manipulation quicker. You understand that not everyone deserves access to your energy. That wisdom did not come from comfort. It came from surviving things that should have destroyed you. That is why chosen ones carry a different energy, a deeper energy. You can feel it in their presence, in their silence, in their eyes. There is pain there, but there is also strength, not loud strength, not fake confidence, real strength. The kind built through surviving emotional wars nobody applauded. The kind built through rebuilding yourself alone. The kind built through carrying pain without letting it poison your spirit. And that is why your journey had to happen exactly the way it did. Because your suffering gave you vision. Now you can see what most people cannot. You understand that appearances deceive. You understand that energy never lies. You understand that peace is more valuable than attention. You understand that protecting your soul matters more than fitting into the crowd. That awareness is your power now. And nobody who lives asleep can understand the strength it took for you to wake up. Once the veil is lifted, everything changes. Not slowly, not temporarily, permanently. You begin to see the world for what it truly is, not what people pretend it to be. The masks become obvious. The fake smiles become easier to recognize. The hidden jealousy behind compliments becomes visible. You start hearing the truth in people's energy, not just in their words. And that level of awareness changes the way you move forever. Because once a soul survives darkness, it stops begging for acceptance. The old version of you wanted to be liked, wanted to fit in, wanted people to understand your heart. You over-explained yourself, overgave, overloved, over-sacrificed. You tolerated disrespect just to avoid losing people. You stayed in draining environments because you feared loneliness. You dimmed your light so insecure people could feel comfortable around you. But suffering changed that. Darkness changed that. The nights you cried alone changed that. Because pain forced you to confront a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. No amount of external acceptance can heal internal abandonment. And once you finally understand that, the chains break. The veil lifts. Suddenly you no longer feel desperate for validation. You no longer panic when people walk away. You no longer need applause to believe in your worth. Why? Because the darkest moments of your life taught you something powerful. You survived without them. You survived betrayal. You survived rejection. You survived heartbreak. You survived isolation. You survived moments where life felt unbearably heavy. And after surviving all of that, human approach, how loses its power over you. That is when a chosen one becomes impossible to control. Control only works on people who fear losing something. But what happens when someone has already lost everything that once defined them? What happens when someone has already experienced emotional death and rebuilt themselves from the ashes? They become fearless in a different way, not reckless, not arrogant, free. Free from the need to constantly impress others, free from the addiction to validation, free from toxic attachments, free from the pressure to perform for acceptance. That freedom terrifies people who depend on control, because society is built around fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of standing alone, fear of being different. Most people betray themselves daily just to remain accepted by the crowd. They silence their truth to fit in. They wear masks to survive socially. They tolerate disrespect because loneliness scares them more than suffering. But the awakened soul no longer operates that way. Once the veil lifts, you realize peace is more valuable than popularity. And that realization changes your entire energy. You stop forcing conversations. You stow, chasing people who act confused about your value. You stop begging for love that should come naturally. You stop shrinking yourself to fit spaces that were never meant for your spirit. Now, you choose alignment over acceptance. That means some people will leave. Let them. Some relationships only survived because you abandoned yourself to maintain them. Once you began respecting your own soul, those connections could no longer continue. That is not loss. That is liberation. Because the truth is, many people only loved the controllable version of you, the version that stayed quiet, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that constantly sought approval, the version that ignored their intuition to keep others comfortable. But the awakened version, the healed version, the version that sees clearly and stands firmly within themselves, that version scares people, because a person who no longer fears rejection becomes incredibly powerful. You cannot manipulate them with silence. You cannot control them with guilt. You cannot own them through emotional games. Why? Because they already walked through darkness alone. They already survived the worst internal battle, imaginable. And surviving darkness creates a different type of human being. A person who values authenticity over image. A person who protects their energy fiercely. A person who listens to intuition instead of public opinion. A person who would rather stand alone in truth than belong in deception. That is the true transformation of the chosen one. The veil lifts, and suddenly the world's illusions lose their grip on your soul. You no longer envy shallow success. You no longer worship appearances. You no longer chase temporary validation from emotionally empty people. You see deeper now. You understand that many people are spiritually asleep chasing distractions while ignoring their soul. You understand how easily crowds are manipulated by fear, trends, ego, and external approval. But your suffering woke you up. That is why your path became lonely. Awakened souls naturally separate from unconscious environments. Not because they think they are better, but because their spirit can no longer tolerate what drains them. And yes, sometimes that loneliness hurts. Sometimes you miss who you used to be. Sometimes you miss belonging. Sometimes you miss the comfort of ignorer, NCE. But deep down, you know you can never return to that version of yourself again. You have seen too much, felt too much, survived too much. The veil lifted for a reason. Your soul was never meant to stay asleep forever. And now that you are awake, your energy carries something rare. Inner freedom. The kind of freedom money cannot buy. The kind of freedom approval cannot create. The kind of freedom that only comes after surviving darkness and discovering that your spirit is stronger than everything that tried to destroy it. That is why you no longer chase acceptance. Because once a soul truly knows its own worth, it becomes impossible to control.